Equipped IPF Worlds has just concluded, and it got me thinking, how do these single ply world records compare to the best raw lifters of today? Well, shockingly, Austin Perkins' best raw total would actually have won the Equipped World title this year, and against a 20-time world champion who is widely considered the Equipped GOAT, no less. So in this video, I'm going to be comparing the IPF World Records raw versus Equipped for totals and individual lifts across the men and the women. As it turns out, Perk isn't the only one who's closing in on those Equipped records. Okay, so starting off with the men's records. So these are the raw world records in each weight class, and the Equipped ones for comparison. So you have Sergey Fedosyan in the 59s, who's also the world record holder in raw. Another Russian, Sergey Glatkik, who also held a world record and won world titles in the raw 66s. Then in the 74s, you have Yaroslav Olek, like I mentioned, who is the 20-time world champion, just won his 20th world title, 3-time world games champ. And that record is not a crazy way out of reach from what Austin Perkins can do, which I'll get to in a second, more detail. And then you get to the Ukrainians, and boy do the Ukrainians love lifting Equipped. I'm not a huge Equipped guy, I didn't realize this, but watching Equipped Worlds, or bits and pieces here and there, it seemed like every single weight class, it was two Ukrainians battling it out for gold and silver. It was crazy. But Volodymyr Rysiev is the 83 kilo world record holder. Then in the 93s, you have Konstantin Musienko. And the 83s, I should mention, by the way, is also not a crazy way out of reach. So I'll talk about that in more detail too. Then in the 105s, another Ukrainian, Sergei Billy. 120s, another Ukrainian, Alexei Bichkov. And in the 120 pluses, you have Blaine Sumner. So those are differences in how much greater the Equipped world records are, which you would expect them to be quite a bit greater. The average comes out to about 11.1% is how much bigger the Equipped world records are. And there's notably 3 weight classes there that are below that by quite a bit, right? So you have the 66s, which I'm not going to talk about because Shell Backlund, who himself also won world championships and held world records in the Equipped side, he's the raw 66 world record holder, and he's no longer a 66. So I don't think the 820 world record is going to be threatened, given that Shell has left the weight class. We have the 74s and the 83s that are quite a bit closer than the rest. Also worth noting that if you take Rondell Hunt's best 120 total of 1045, that cuts the percentage down quite a bit on the 120s, but that's still like 90 kilos away from the Equipped record, so I don't think that's necessarily in danger either for now. The 2 weight classes that I'm going to be talking about are the 74s and the 83s, and I actually think, despite the percentage being slightly higher with the gap, the 74s are the closer to catching the Equipped record. But first, let's take a look at what the Equipped world record is, and that's 908 kilos, done, of course, by Yaroslav Olek. So this particular record was done at 2017 Worlds, on his way to winning, I don't even know how many world title would have been at the time. Like I said, he just won his 20th recently. And he won it with an 850 total, which I'll show you Perk's numbers, but we all know that's less than what Perk has been able to do. But yeah, 908 is his biggest ever total. He's now 50 years old. He's in his 50s, still winning world titles. And even when he set this world record, which is his best ever total, he was already well in his 40s. So that's pretty crazy in and of itself. But 908 is the Equipped world record in the 74s, done by the Equipped GOAT. Also 3-time world games champion. However, Austin Perkins in the 74s, we all saw at Advances Houston, totaled 858 kilos. By the way, speaking of Advances, if you want to grab yourselves a pair and support the channel, use code PRESSER at checkout. I'll leave a link in the description. But yeah, Perk won Advances Houston, 858 kilos. Absolute monster total, the single greatest total if you go by GL points or dots or pretty much any formula-based system you want to go on the raw side. And like I said at the start of the video, this is 8 kilos more than Yaroslav Olek's 850 kilo world's winning total, which himself he had to pull a winning deadlift in order to win on bodyweight against, I think, an Ecuadorian lifter this year. So it's not like he cruised to an 850, he had to push to get that on that day. So Perk likely would have beat him competing raw. So yeah, pretty damn crazy there. Okay, on to the 83s, and we have Volodymyr Rysiev, who is now a 93 lifter and actually won 93 worlds this year, I believe, as well as best lifter. But he used to be an 83, and 945 kilos is the Equipped world record in this class. This was done also in 2017 at World Games. So both his and Yaroslav's world record totals are 8 years old now. And like I said, Rusiev has since moved up to 93s and posted well in excess of 1,000 kilos. But this world record still stands, and he's a 6-time world champion, I believe 3 times the 83s and 3 times the 93s, including this year. Well, those are the lifts there that make up that 945 kilo total. And as crazy as it is, the raw 83s are already in the 900s. Specifically, one of them is, and that is Joe Borenstein. Similarly, at Advances Houston, he finished second behind Perk, putting up the second most impressive raw performance ever if you go by GL points or dots, totaling 904 kilos, extending his American record by 4 kilos. His IPF world record is 890. I should mention Perk's IPF world record is 843. But I anticipate both those numbers will be smashed come Sheffield. But 904 kilos, absolutely crazy. And that is 41 kilos off of the record, which, I mean, technically that's a smaller gap than Perk. Perk was only 50 kilos away. The thing with Perk, the reason why I think he's closer than Joey B is, despite the kilos and percentages being less, is because I think Joey B is a lot closer to his limit with this 904 than what Perk was with that 858. Perk, relatively or comparatively to Joey B's performance, cruised to that 858. And I don't think it's out of realms of possibility for us to see a high 800s total, or potentially even 900 like Perk's been talking about lately on some podcasts. So I think it's a while before we're going to see Joey B cash at 945, although given he's still a junior, I think that Advances meal was actually his last meet as a junior. Is he going to put another 41 kilos on his total in the next however many years? Probably. Or maybe someone else will in that time. But I still think for now Perk is the closest one. So I decided to delve a bit more into this. So yeah, fair warning, if you don't like numbers and stats, I don't know why would be watching my channel if you don't, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of numbers coming up. So I decided to break it down with the squat, bench, and deadlift world records. I was curious to see the breakdown. We all know that squat and bench are where the majority of the extra kilos is going to come from in equipment versus the deadlift. But I was curious to see how much, so here you go, here are the numbers. So this is how much bigger the equipped world record squats are on the men's side versus the raw world records. And you can see there are a few ones that stand out here. So the average is 15.6%. You have the 74s, where it's Perk's world record of 323 versus Oleg's of 370. However, based on how easily Perk did 320 at Advances, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that record gets bumped up to 330s, maybe even approaching 340, which is going to close that gap quite a bit. Then the 83 and 93 raw squat world record holder, both of those weight classes actually held by Russell Orhe at the moment, and both are closer than average to the equipped world records respectively, although Jamar Royster's unofficial 800-pound squat at 93 would be even closer. And then of course, the closest one is a super heavyweight, where you have Jesus Olivares' 478, which is less than 30 kilos behind Blaine Sumner's 505 squat world record. So as far as these go, I think the only one that's really going to be in danger anytime soon is the 120 plus. And I mean, we'll see what Jesus does at SBD Austin in a few days' time, but based on some of his training squat sets, he's been looking crazy strong in squats. 505 strong? Probably not, but who knows, maybe one day. Alright, on to the bench world records. So you can see here, this is by far the biggest difference. Average of almost 30%, 29.2% greater are the equipped world records. And here there is one extremely noticeable outlier, and that is the 66s. That just shows how crazy Eddie Berglund's 213.5 raw world record was, given that it was only 9 kilos below the equipped world record. Absolutely insane. That is the only one that is even in the same stratosphere. Everything else is above 20% and is not going to be touched anytime soon. Even that 66 world record, Eddie Berglund's now 74, and no other 66 in the world is coming close to 213.5. So yeah, that equipped world record is safe for now. But yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Only 4.2%. That's wild. And then the deadlift, and this is the interesting one. We all knew that the kilos had to come from somewhere. If we're having raw lifters that are starting to close the gap on the equipped lifters, those kilos have to be made up somewhere. And if the squat and bench are where the huge advantages are, deadlift is where the raw lifters claw that back. And in fact, in 5 out of the 8 weight classes, the raw world record deadlift actually exceeds that of the equipped world record. You can see those numbers and stats there. It's only in the 66s, 74s, and the 120s where the equipped world record is greater. And in the 66s, it's literally only by half a kilo. In the 120s, the 420 equipped world record was set by Krzysztof Wierzbicki. So that's why that's still higher. And the 74s is, yeah, still higher by quite a bit as well. Now, why is this? I mean, I think, it's pretty clear that the deadlift suit, that's the lift that gives you the least advantages in Equipped. I've never competed Equipped, right? So maybe some of the Equipped guys can tell me, but the way I see it, this will be two reasons. Number one, the talent pool in the raw side is so much greater than the Equipped side, so the people are just generally stronger, and we're generally seeing people with more favorable deadlift leverages get into the sport and get that strong, hence why the raw world records exceed the Equipped ones. And the other factor, I think, is grip. Limiting factor in a lot of deadlifts, especially for the bigger guys, is grip, and equipment absolutely does nothing for grip, right? There's zero advantage to doing Equipped for your grip. Your hands are still the same, exact same, right? So it's not that deadlift suit doesn't help a deadlift. I think it still would. It's just that because of the talent pool and the fact that the grip doesn't change, I think that's why we're seeing greater records on the raw side. Although, by all means, let me know if you have different opinions on that. I decided to compare some lifters who have lifted at a high level on the raw and the Equipped side and compare their deadlifts. I feel that would be a cool comparison as well. So starting with Fedosienko, of course, multiple-time world champion, world record holder in both, and his best Equipped deadlift is actually 1.5 kilos below his best raw pull. But for intents purposes, that's essentially the same. So it looked like he didn't get much out of a deadlift suit. Sergey Gladkick, similarly, 66 lifter, his Equipped deadlift this time was actually more than his raw, but only by 2.5 kilos. So yeah, again, not much difference there. Shell Backlund is another great example, someone who's won world titles in raw and Equipped and set world records on both sides. And if you're taking a GOAT off the sport, counting both raw and Equipped, Shell would have to be on top. But yeah, his best Equipped deadlift is 12.5 over his best raw pull. Although it's worth noting that 3 for 2.5 he did as a 83, and 340 was done as a 74 raw. Krzysztof Wierzbicki, who I mentioned, his best Equipped deadlift of 420 is still the heaviest deadlift ever in IPF history. That was done in 2017 World Games. And 400 is his best ever raw deadlift done under tested conditions, so stiff bar, tested meat, right? I know he's pulled in excess of 1,000 pounds in other competitions, turned to the dark side, so to speak. So it seemed like he got quite a bit out of it, 20 kilos. And then Tony Cliff is another one who's competed at a high level in both, and his best Equipped deadlift is 5 kilos above his raw pull. So it does seem like, to me, intuitively makes sense that a deadlift suit would help. And then the reason why we're seeing the records being generally more on the raw side is, like I said, the talent pool and the fact grip remains unchanged. Also, you can see that the two Russian Sergeys who didn't really have much change in their Equipped versus raw pulls, they usually tend to fail deadlifts on grip, or at the very least, I know Fedosienko did. Grip was a big limiting factor for him, so it makes sense that his Equipped pull wouldn't really add too many more kilos. Whereas in the heavier weight classes, where we didn't really see as many grip issues from the likes of Shell, Krzysztof, or Tony Cliff, it makes a bit more difference, although still not that much. Anyway, that's a bit of a side tangent that I decided to go on. But yeah, those are some deadlift raw versus Equipped stats. Okay, on to the women. So these are the raw world records that you can see there. And I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did for the men and compare them to the Equipped world records. So 47s is held by Wei Ling Chen at a nice even 500, who of course was also the former world champion world record holder in the raw side of the 47s. 52s, you have Zuzana Akula of Poland. In the 57s, you have Sri Hurtadi. 63s is Carola Gara, who also was the world record holder on the raw side, and also someone who was similar to Shell on the men's side, saw great success in equipment and in raw. One of the best raw lifters of today as well. 69s is Kelsey McCarthy, who actually just set this world record at this year's Worlds just a week or so ago. 76s, you have some Polish woman by the name of Agata Sitko, who has the Equipped world record. In the 84s, you also have some Polish woman by the name of Agata Sitko. This Agata lady seems pretty strong. I think she should try out raw lifting. She should probably do pretty well. Absolute freak that Agata holds two weight class world records in equipment alongside all the crazy raw lifting and raw accomplishments she's gathered, and she's still barely out of the juniors. Insane. And then 84 pluses is Bonica Brown, the super heavyweight legend. So those are differences there. Average actually turns out to be pretty similar to the men, 11.7%. The men was 11.1%. And similarly, there are a few outliers here where you can see the gap is noticeably smaller. So you have the 57s, which I'm going to talk about in more detail, the 69s, which obviously Agata has the raw world record, and being the pound for pound queen of powerlifting, she is not very far off at all. So that's the one that's the closest. Then 57s with Sara Naldi closing on 565. I know the 84s is a low percentage, but the thing with the 84s is Amanda Lawrence has pretty much been at 647 for like the last 5 years or thereabouts, in the mid 640s for that long. So I don't really see her being able to suddenly add 50 kilos to a total. I think she still can add kilos to a total, but I don't necessarily think that 704.5 is in grave danger. However, a record that I think is in more danger is actually the 84 pluses, where it's Brittany Schlater's 737.5, but it's actually Sonita Muluh, who I think is closer to that 791, and I'll explain more on that later. But first, I'm going to look at the 69 kilo comparison between Agata and Kelsey. So this is the Equipped world record that, like I mentioned, Kelsey set at this year's Worlds on her way to winning her 6th world title in equipment, 652.5, walking away with a cool world record there. Let all her lifts play out. She's also a silver medalist at World Games twice, so super high level equipped lifter in the mid 600s, which if it weren't for Agata Sitko, this record would not be in danger whatsoever, but because of Agata, it absolutely is. And she is definitely closing in on mid 600s, which is crazy to say for a raw 69 female lifter, but that's the reality that we live in now. So Agata Sitko, her best total is actually 635. And this is the lifts I'm going to show you. This was from a silent worker meet earlier this year that she did pretty soon after Sheffield, actually. Speaking of Sheffield, she actually won it with 628 kilos, which is the biggest 69 total she's ever done and anyone's ever done. I'm taking this one though because she only weighed in at 71 point something when she did this. So she very much could have done this as a 69, I would think. She just had no reason to make it at this particular meet in France. But yeah, 635, that is under 20 kilos away from Kelsey's equipped world record, which is crazy. And you can see the lifts, there is a huge difference in the deadlift, which sort of backs up what I confirmed earlier when it comes to deadlift, being by far the smallest advantage. And even like the squat and bench aren't a crazy way apart, which is wild. So I 100% think that Agata is going to break the equipped world record and do it raw at some point. The only limiting factor to this actually is how long Agata is going to stay as a 69, because I assume she's moving up to the 76s moving forward. Given that world record is lower, it's an easier target for Sheffield, plus her long-term goal of battling and beating Amanda Lawrence. So I don't know how much longer she's going to stay in the 69s, but I mean, if she did and committed to chasing down Kelsey's 652.5, I think she 100% could do it. Alright, the next one is the 57s. And the world record here is held by Indonesian lifter Sri Hartadi. And this was done at 2019 Worlds, I want to say. Or 2018 Worlds, one of the two. But Sri is actually a 7-time IPF World Champion in equipment. You can see her best lifts play out there. Huge squat, huge bench for the 57s. And still a respectable, but not a world record level 190 kilo deadlift for a 565 kilo total. Now the 57 class has leveled up recently, most notably with Sara Naldi. So Sara Naldi won Worlds this year and also set a world record with 520 kilos. However, at World Games this year in August, she totaled 530. Right, you can see her list from that day play out. The reason why I'm showing you this is similar to Agata. She did this weighing over 57, but she literally was like 57.1 or like a few hundreds of grams over. So as to preserve Sheffield advantages and not make world records official at World Games, which was fair enough. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, she was a 57 here. She just was slightly over. So 530 is the unofficial 57 world record, which is only 35 kilos away now from the 57 kilo equipped world record held by Sri. And 35 kilos, I know is quite a bit when you're talking about these ladies, but you never know, it could be made up in the future. And there are a number of other 57s as well who I think aren't that far away and are in the 500s, who also could, make a few leaps and bounds and all of a sudden be right there chasing that 565 number. And then finally, you have the 84 pluses. This, I think, is the final weight class where the equipped world record is in real danger, which is crazy because it's held by Benika Brown. And Benika, not only is she a 4-time world champion in equipment, she's also a 7-time world champion in Raw. So she has 11 world titles. She also has a World Games gold medal from back in 2017. And this is her equipped world record of 791. You can see all the lifts play out there. She squatted over 700 pounds, benched 220, and pulled 252.5. This was from 2018 Worlds, I believe. So just a couple kilos shy of that 800 kilo mark. And like I said, she's also one of the best raw lifters of all time, held the world record for ages, and sort of in the era before Brittany Schlater and Sonita Muluh emerged a couple years ago, the super heavyweights in both raw and equipped was literally all Benika. However, Sonita Muluh is closing in on her equipped numbers. Sonita has blown past Benika's raw numbers already, as has Brittany Schlater, but the crazy thing is Sonita is now approaching her equipped numbers. Now, these numbers that I'm showing you, all of these were red lighted. However, they were all lifts that she made, and strength-wise, she didn't miss them. She missed them on technicalities, and these were all of her third attempts at World Games. So that 325.5 squat was initially white lighted and then overturned to a bad lift, presumably due to depth. And then similarly, this 162.5 kilo bench, which also was a third attempt, and again she missed it. Although this time it was more clearly, you could see why there was up-down motion here. Even though she grinded it out as an impressive grind, it didn't count as a good lift. And this third deadlift of 275 kilos, which again she missed, presumably due to a soft lockout issue, similar to her missed deadlifts at Worlds. However, the fact is she lifted all these weights, and if you total that up, that's 763 kilos, which is under 30 kilos away from Benika's number. Now, on this day, Sonita's actual total was 727.5, so quite a ways below this, on her way to finishing second behind Brittany Schlater, and her best ever total is 735.5, which was the former world record before Britt took it back at Worlds. So yeah, Brittany technically is the strongest super heavyweight on paper in terms of best totals with 737.5, but I think Brittany's 737.5 was a lot closer to her top end, and she had to grind out quite a few of those lifts, whereas Sonita still misses a bunch of lifts and still totals in the 720s, 730s, as you could see from these missed, and quote-unquote missed on technicalities, third attempts from World Games. If she has a good day, she's in the 760s. And under 30 kilos away from Benika Brown's world record. When talking the super heavyweights, and especially with a huge squat and huge pull like that, 30 kilos could very easily be made up in just a couple of attempt selection changes, right? So I'm not saying I think Sonita is capable of 790s right now. I do think she's capable of 760s right now because hell, she's showed us that essentially at World Games. But I definitely think that equipped world record from Benika is in danger in the next years or a couple of years. And who knows, even Brittany Schlater could level up and be knocking on that door soon. So same breakdown of the squat, bench, and deadlift as I did for the men, I'm going to do here for the women. And we see similar trends. Average of 17.7% greater are the equipped squat world records for the women. And notably, the huge ally here is the 84 pluses, where Sonita's 318 squat is only 4.5 kilos below the equipped world record. And like I said, 325.5, if that world game squat would have counted, she actually would already have outsquatted the equipped world record, which is crazy. Some other ones that are close, Amanda Lawrence in the 84s with a 249.5. However, that's still, almost 40 kilos off. So that's still quite a big gap there. In the 69s, you have Carola Gara, who she might hold both those records actually. I know she holds the raw one. But yeah, that's not a whole lot away, except I don't see Carola Gara squatting 260 raw, so that's probably still pretty safe. And then in 57, Sara Naldi squat world record, which is 197.5. At World Games, she did a couple kilos more than that. However, 230 is still quite the jump above that. And then bench is a crazy big difference, as you would expect, right? An average of 34.1%. And the only one here that is even in the same stratosphere is the 69 kilo class, and that's because of Agata Sitko's crazy bench world record of 158, which is actually above the bench world records of the two weight classes above them. But yeah, even though that's the closest one, that is still 25 kilos away from the equipped world record in that class for the bench. And yeah, Agata is not benching 180 plus anytime soon. As crazy as she is, I don't think she's hitting a 400-pound bench. Not in the 69 kilo class anyway. And then deadlifts, here we see a similar trend to what we saw with the men, except even more dramatically, where literally every single weight class bar one, the raw deadlift world record eclipses that of the equipped one. And in a lot of weight classes, actually by quite a bit. So you can see the difference there. The only weight class where the equipped world record is greater is the 63s, which is by 5 kilos only. And every other weight class, it is the raw side that has the bigger pull, and in some of them by quite a bit. I mean, Heather Connor's 47 kilo deadlift is 12.5% more than the equipped one. You have the Farhana Farid's 217 at 52 is also almost 10% above. You know, Jad Jacobs' 57 kilo pull. Then you look at the 84s with Ziana Azariah. Agata's 260 and 69s. Even Natalie Lalai's 84 plus deadlift world record. Yeah, so deadlifts is huge, and you know, with how the 63s are going, I anticipate that that is also going to turn red very soon, i.e. the raw world record is soon going to eclipse 245 in that weight class as well. But there you have it. That is my breakdown of the raw weight classes across the men and the women that I think are potentially catching up to the equipped ones in the next few years. So let me know what you think, and which raw world record is first going to catch an equipped one, and who's going to be the one to do it.